A good day, everyone, especially Ma'am Zerudu. I am JC Cathedral, and I am tasked to introduce our group. We are the Group 5, and our topic is all about social, political, economic, and cultural issue in the Philippine history. Lesson 1. It is the Agrarian Reform Policies. The CARP covered all public and private agricultural lands regardless of the crops planted. It also includes public domain lands that were suitable for agriculture. It sought to redistribute land not only to farmers and farm workers, but also to other land less poor. One of the major programs of CARP is land tenure improvement, which seeks to hasten distribution of lands to landless farmers. Similarly, the department offers support services to the beneficiaries such as infrastructure facilities, marketing assistance program, and technical support programs. Furthermore, the department seeks to facilitate resolved cases and deliver agrarian justice. The legal basis for CARP is the Republic Act No. 6657, otherwise known as Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law, signed by President Corazon C. Aquino on June 10, 1900s, an act which aims to promote social justice and industrialization, providing the mechanism for its implementation and for other purposes. It is an act instituting a comprehensive agrarian reform program to promote social justice and industrialization. Providing the mechanism for its implementation, CARP stands for the Agrarian Reform Program, a government initiative that aims to grant landless farmers and farm workers ownership of agricultural lands. It was signed into law by President Corazon C. Aquino on June 10, 1988, and was scheduled to have been completed in 1998. On the year of its deadline, Congress enacted a law, Republic Act No. 8532, appropriating additional funds to the program and extending the automatic appropriation of ill-gotten wealth recovered by the Presidential Commission on Good Governance for CARP until 2008. What is RA 6657? So basically it is CARP, or Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program. This means it is the redistribution of public and private agricultural lands to farmers and farm workers who are landless irrespective of tenurial arrangement. So let us dig deeper and let me explain. Let's talk about another topic, which is the Constitution. So what is a Constitution? It is the fundamental law of the land which establishes the character and the basic principles of the government. Another term or meaning of this is also the basic principles on which a state is governed, making clear the rights of the individual and limiting powers of the government. The Constitution 1987 is the fundamental law of the land in the Philippines. It establishes the structure, policies, rules, and duties of the Philippine government. It contains the Bill of Rights and set out the state's obligations to promote and uphold social justice and human rights. It is written in Article 13. Talk about the Philippine Constitution. This was the first Republican constitution in Asia. The document states that the people have exclusive sovereignty. It states basic civil rights separated from the church and the state, and called for the creation of an assembly of representatives which would act as the legislative body. It also calls for a presidential form of government with a president elected for a term of 4 years by a majority of the assembly. And it was written by Felipe Calderon and Felipe Buencamino. 1. Philippine Bill of 1902 or Cooper Act. It provided for the creation of a popularly elected Philippine Assembly and specified that legislative power would be vested in a bicameral legislature composed of the Philippine Commission, Upper House, and the Philippine Assembly or the Lower House. Its key provisions included a Bill of Rights for the Filipinos and the appointment of 2 non-voting Filipino resident commissioners to represent the Philippines in the United States Congress. 2. Philippine Autonomy Act of 1916 or Jones Law. It modified the structure of the Philippine government by removing the Philippine Commission as the legislative upper house, replacing it with a Senate elected by Filipino voters. Number 3 is Tidings-McDuffie Act. In 1934, the Tidings-McDuffie Act, essentially the Hair House Cutting Act as modified by Manuel L. Quezon, was passed by the U.S. Congress, signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The bill mandated a 10-year transition period to independence in 1944. The first step would be to establish the Commonwealth of the Philippines in 1935.
The 1935 Constitution of the Commonwealth Government. The original 1935 Constitution provided for unicameral National Assembly and the President was elected to a 6-year term without re-election. It was then amended in 1940 to have a bicameral Congress composed of a Senate and House of Representatives, as well as the creation of an independent electoral commission. The 1943 Constitution of the Second Republic. Pursuant to the 1943 Constitution, Jose P. Laurel was unanimously elected President by the National Assembly. Drafted by a committee appointed by the Philippine Executive Commission, the body established by the Japanese to administer the Philippines in lieu of the Commonwealth of the Philippines, which had established a government in exile. The 1973 Constitution, or the New Society. The chairman of the 1971 CONCON were former President Carlos P. Garcia and Justado Macapagal. It was promulgated after Marcos' declaration of martial law of the Proclamation Decree 1081 on September 21, 1972, then introduced to a parliamentary style of government. Legislative power was vested in National Assembly whose members were elected for 6 years term.
Philippine Government and Constitution. We have the political science. It is the study of the polis from the Greek word city. It is a specialized study of state, its government, and politics. We have the states and nation. State has some degree of permanence political concept, and nation is a racial in nature bound by a common race or language as well as customs and traditions. Element of state. We have the people, territory, government, and sovereignty. People is the one who inhabit the population of the state that comprise its citizens, and territory is a definite geographic area occupied by the people. Government is the agency or instrumentality through which the will of the people is formulated, expressed, and realized. Sovereignty is the supreme power of the state to rule over its citizens within its territory and be free from control of the foreign states. So we have the natural theory. The formation of the state results from man's natural inclination to associate and interact. And divine theory holds the view that the state is divine creation and its rules are God's chosen one. And force theory asserts that the state emerged as consequence of invasion, force, and coercion. Patriarchal theory is the state evolves from families, and social contract theory explains that the states were formed by deliberate and voluntary agreement among the people. Branches of the government. We have the executive law, legislative law, and judicial law. The executive law is the implementing body, which we have the president, and the legislative law is the making body, under of that is the Congress, and the judicial law is the interpreting body, which is the court system. These three coincide to improve and balance our society. Inherit the power of the states. Executive law is the implementing police power, the power of the state to enact laws and regulation in relation to person and property for the promotion of public health, morals, safety, and general welfare. And we have the taxation. It is the power of state to impose proportional charges upon person, property, or rights for the use and support of the government and to enable it to discharge a legitimate function. And the eminent domain, which is the right or power of the state to take private property for public use upon payment of just compensating body, which is the president.
So government. Government is an institution that has the power to make laws and enforce certain territories, people, and other organizations. there are systems of government. Number one is the unitary. Unitary is a system of political organization in which most of all the governing powers resides in a centralized government. And number two is the federalism. Federalism is a mode of political organization that unites separate states or other polities within an overarching political system in such a way as to allow each to maintain its own fundamental political integrity. Other types of systems include democracy. So democracy means rule by the people, or the word comes from the ancient Greek words demos means the people and kratos means to rule. A democratic country has a system of government in which the people have the power to participate in decision making. Each democracy is unique and works in different ways. Next is communism. Communism is a political and economic doctrine that aims to replace private property and a profit-based economy with public ownership and communal control of at least the major means of production and the natural resources of a society. Next is socialism. Socialism is a political philosophy and movement encompassing a range of economic and social systems which are characterized by social ownership of the means of production as opposed to private ownership. Next is the oligarchy. Oligarchy is a government by the few, especially despotic power exercised by a small and privileged group for corrupt or selfish purposes. Oligarchies in which members of the ruling group are wealthy or exercise their power through their wealth are known as plutocracies. Next is monarchy. In a monarchy, a king or queen is head of state. The British monarchy is known as a constitutional monarchy. This means that while the sovereign is head of state, the ability to make and pass legislation resides with an elected parliament. The United Kingdom is an example of monarchy where the king holds ceremonial powers. Next is colonialism. Colonialism is the act of power and domination of one nation by acquiring or maintaining full or partial political control over another sovereign nation. The country or nation which comes under the control of another foreign nation is known as a colony of that dominating country. For example, the eastern seaboard of North America was colonized by England, Central America was colonized by Spain, and Siberia was colonized by Russia. The last one is the theocracy. Theocracy is a government by divine guidance. The, one, two, three. The last one is theocracy. Theocracy is a government by divine guidance or by officials who are regarded as divinely guided. In many theocracies, government leaders are members of the clergy, and the state's legal system is based on religious law. Theocratic rule was typical of early civilizations. So contemporary examples of theocracies include Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the Vatican. The Philippine Constitution. So the Philippine Constitution of 1987 is composed of the preamble and 18 articles. So the preamble states that we, the sovereign Filipino people, imploring the aid of Almighty God in order to build a just and humane society and establish a government that shall embody our ideals and aspirations, promote the common good, conserve and develop our patrimony, and secure to ourselves and our posterity the blessings of independence and democracy under the rule of law and the regime of truth, justice, freedom, love, equality, and peace. Do ordain and promulgate this Constitution. Next is citizenship. Citizenship is a term denoting membership of a citizen in political society, which membership implies reciprocally a duty of allegiance on the part of the member and the duty of protection on the part of the state. General ways of acquiring citizenship. First is the involuntary method, and under this method is the citizenship of birth. Number one is the jus sanguinis. Relationship by blood is the basis of the acquisition of citizenship under this rule. The children follows the citizenship of both of the parents or one of them. This is the predominating principle in the Philippines. Number two is the jus soli or jus loci. Place of birth as the basis for acquiring citizenship under this rule. And Mr. Taipan will continue this topic. Thank you. So the 18 articles are the following. Article 1 is the national territory. Article 2, Declaration of Principles and State Policies. Article 3, the Bill of Rights. Article 4, Citizenship. Article 5, Suffrage. Article 6, the Legislative Department. Article 7, Executive Department. Article 8, Judicial Department. Article 9, Constitutional Commissions. Article 10, Local Government. Article 11, Accountability of Public Office. Article 12, the National Economy and Patrimony. Article 13, Social Justice and Human Rights. Article 14, Education, Science and Technology, Arts, Culture, and Sports. Article 15, the Family. Article 16, General Provisions. Article 17, Amendments of Revisions. And Article 18, Transitory Provisions.
Good day, ma'am. Good day, everyone. So, I am Joseph Emanji Taipan. And the second general ways of acquiring citizenship is the voluntary method by the naturalization, except in case of a collective naturalization of inhabitants of a territory which takes place when it's ceded by one to another as a result of conquest or treaty. So example ani is like if you are American citizenship tapos gusto ni citizen, gusto ni mo mahimong Filipino citizen, you must have to ikaw na mismo mag-voluntary nga magkuan ka na Filipino citizen tapos pinaagyan na buhaton to nimo mga what dapat na kay mga qualification ato na may rules nga sundon before makuha ang Filipino citizen tapos sundon to nimo applyan to nimo buhaton to mga procedure para mahimo ka ang Filipino citizen. Tapos ways of acquiring citizenship through naturalization. Una is by the judgment of the court. The foreigner who wants to become a Filipino citizen must apply for naturalization with proper regional trial court, must have all the qualifications provided by law, and must comply with all the procedures and conditions prescribed. So, that is by judgment of the court. If you are a foreigner tapos gusto mo mga Filipino citizen, like atong gingon ako nga voluntary method, dapat buhaton nimo to mga procedures, mga qualifications, tapos i-judge din ka na sa court if qualify ba ka mahimong Filipino citizen or dili. Tapos second one is by direct act of Congress. In this case, Congress simply legislate a law granting citizenship to a foreigner. Like nga ni sa visiting visa or kanang working visa. Like kanang sige nakabalik-balik dani or pinanaka years dani sige balik, sige kag na trabaho dani. Nailong sa Congress nga if sa qualify na kaana, ma-grant imong pagka-citizenship dari sa Pilipinas. So, in the Philippine Constitution, Article 5, which is called suffrage, it is the right and obligation to vote in the election of the government of officers and in the decision public questions submitted to people. So in Article 5, suffrage, you have a right to vote in the election as a Filipino citizen. Na kay right nga mubutar, mapili sa imong gustong kandidato, tapos kanang para mamuno sa ato ang nasod na sa imong rights as a Filipino. So, in the Articles 5, Section 1, suffrage may be exercised by all citizens of the Philippines not otherwise disqualified by law. Example, kanang dili ka kanang gibawalan na ka magbotar kay kanang example naman ani ang uban anak kay nakasala, tapos ang ikaduha is who are at least 18 years of age. Ang pwede na makabotar is kanang 18 pataas, dili pwede ang 18 paubos. So, ikatulo is who shall have resided in the Philippines for at least 1 year and in the place wherein they propose to vote at least 6 months immediately preceding the election. So, kanang daang pwede pud makabotar is kanang nagparehistro ka tapos dara ka dana ka dari sa Pilipinas nagpuyo at least 1 year or kanang example ni balhin kag lugar is da example da ka dari sa Digos tapos balhin kag Davao dito at least nagpuyo ka dito 6 months tapos magparehistro ka dito tapos pwede na din ka makabotar dito sa ilang mga mayor kisa yung kaanana na mausay mo hang mapilion dito nga na ang mga qualifications kung magbalhin kay kuan mga lugar. Elections refers to the selection by which people serve as the electorate of persons as candidate for fixed period. So in the elections is kanang mamili kanang mga kandidato nga gusto nimo tapos kanang kanang fix da sa mga fix nga kanang position nga ilang gusto. Tapos recall. It is means by which local officials may be removed from office even before the expiration of their term of office by votes of the residents. So in the recall is kanang botara kada bitong example na mo wala na ganahan sa inyong pamahala sa ilang pamahala pwede sa pinaagis sa pagbotar pagbotar sa mga retawo nga wa sila naganahi ani pwede nila ipahawa to sa ila pahawa niya ipapanaog niya sa ilang position kay wa siya kanang dili niya matarong og kanang pamahala yahang ginasakupan. Tapos plebiscite, it is a type of election wherein the people render decisions to accept or reject certain amendments to the constitution. So that is a plebiscite is kanang example is kanang example na isa ka kanang kuan kanang sa tibok resident sa sa isa ka lugar tapos butaran nga pwede ba ni siya dari o dili nara na sa ilaha tapos na sila rights nga kuan may palingkod ba ni o dili nasa ilaha ang rights ana na pwede ba ipalingkod ba ni dili kung masang-ayon sila nga ipalingkod pwede palingkod niya siya tapos kung dili siya masang-ayon sa mga katawhan pwede pud mawala iyang kanang kuan iyang rights. Tapos initiative, it is the process whereby the people are given the opportunity to direct, propose or enact laws. Like example inganing sa initiative is from the word initiative kanang nasa tawo bitaw nga initiative na nila buhaton ni kay murag delikado kuan na kanang para sa kaayuhan pud sa tanan ingana tapos crimes against national security ang example is espionage, the practice of spying or of using spies typically by governments to obtain political and military information. Example ani is kana mga spy tapos mga intel kuaon nila kanang abira ni mong tao o abira ni mong simple ra ka tao pero spy naman na ito siya. Tapos treason, the crime of betraying one's country especially by attempting to kill the sovereign or overthrow the government. Example ani is kana mga traitor sa bayan nato. Ngana.
Power of the President. The President has the power of appointment. The President appoints members of constitutional commissions, ambassadors, the public ministers, and consultants, or officers of AFP. The next is the power of executive clemency, the power to grant reprieves, commutations, and pardons. Next is pardon, an act of grace proceeding from the President that exempts the individual on whom it bestowed form of punishment the law inflicts for a crime he has committed. And next is reprieve. The postponement of a sentence imposed to a lesser punishment. Next is commutation, the reduction of sentence imposed to a lesser punishment. Number 6 is amnesty, an act of mercy from the President with consent of Congress granted to certain classes of persons who have committed crimes. So this 6 is under the authority of the President, and only the President could give these things. Next is the brief history of Philippine taxation. During the Spanish era, way back in the 17th and 18th centuries, the Contador de Resulta served as the chief royal accountant, whose functions were similar to the Commissioner of Internal Revenue today. Next is the American era, way back on 1898 to 1901. The country was ruled by American and military governors. Next is the Japanese era, way back in 1942 to 1945. The Bureau was combined with the Customs Office and was headed by the Director of Customs and Internal Revenue. Next is the post-war era, way back in 1954 to 1957. Major reorganizations took place in a bureau which created various offices, including the setting up of regional offices in Cebu and Davao in 1955. Next, let's proceed to the Marcos administrations way back on 1965. Commissioners Misael Vera implemented the Blue Master program to curb the abuses of both the taxpayers and the BIR personnel, and the voluntary tax compliance program to encourage professionals in the private and government sectors to report their income and to pay the correct amount of taxes. Now let's proceed to Aquino administration way back on February 1986. After the EDSA revolution, Operation Walang Lagay was launched to promote the efficient and honest collection of taxes. So the Operation Walang Lagay was implemented by the Aquino administration way back on February 1986. Let's proceed to Ramos administration way back on 1993. Commissioner Liwayway Vinson Chato implemented the Action-Centered Transformation Program, or the ACTS, to realign and redirect the entire organization towards the fulfillment of its vision and mission. So let's proceed now to Estrada administration. Commissioners Beethoven Rualo enhanced the voluntary compliance and implemented the Economic Recovery Assistance Payment, or the ERA program. Now let's proceed to Arroyo administration way back on 2001. Commissioner Attorney Rene G. Banyes implemented changes that made the tax system simpler and suited to the Philippine culture, more efficient and transparent. Next, we have the Aquino administration. Under Commissioner Kim S. Jacinto Hinares, the BIR focused on the filing of tax evasion cases, and the BIR was able to collect more than one half of the total revenues of the government Duterte administration. Rodrigo Rua Duterte signed the Republic Act 10963, or the Tax Reform for Acceleration and Inclusion, or the TRAIN Act of 2017, which lowered personal income tax rates but increased taxes on certain goods, leading to a net increase in revenue. This excess revenue will be used to fund the major expansion in public infrastructure in the country. So that would be all. Thank you.